Albrecht, and I'm at the Southern Ohio Art Museum, Portsmouth, and I'm here to see the Dorothy Gill Barnes exhibit. And I've known of Dorothy's work for years, and I've looked forward to seeing a collection. Getting to see the collection together, a large collection together like this, is very exciting. And what I've liked about Dorothy's work all these years is that it takes the ordinary, the things that you kind of see as you've grown up along, when you're out walking along streams and banks and in the nature and woods, is she takes the ordinary and turns it into the extraordinary. And for that, I just think this exhibit really captures that. Basket that Dorothy created, we often think of baskets as having to have some sort of utilitarian use, and this is just celebrating what you can do with vine and bark. Nature has forms already, but then Dorothy takes those forms and turns it into a whole nother sculptural shape, and it's very celebratory to me, and that's what I've always liked about her work. And then also it kind of is the chaos of nature, because some of the little branches or vines have broken off, and to me that's just fine. I love that, the fact that it's not perfect, but it's the way nature is and the way Dorothy sees it. One of the things I like about the basket is these pieces, it's one big piece of bark sawed or cut into strips that still adhere to the main, structure. And then every strip of bark has a hole that's been punched through it, and then the vine has been threaded through it. And it might have been one continuous piece of vine at one time, which is really amazing. It's just a fascinating piece. And the other thing that was interesting about this is as Dorothy worked on this, it probably evolved. She might not have started off with the idea of just having this vine string throughout, but as she started stripping the bark, she discovered new things. And I think that's one of the great things about art, is a process is always evolving, and you don't know what you might end up with until you start. And that's what I like about art on this level, is it began organically and it evolved into this wonderful thing. This piece is called Entwined Branches. It looks like a ladder in some ways, but it's just tree branches. And everyone knows tree branches are kind of going up, and Dorothy has taken some of the smaller branches and then turned them back inside, and now the branches are engaged with each other. And it's just one of the things of nature that's always really fun, is that how chaotic and beautiful it can be, and how one thing evolves into another. And I think that's one thing Dorothy's really captured in this piece, is seeing how these things join up and how she joined them up. And I wonder if she did this when they were green, or if she later did them in her studio. And that's kind of a wonderful thought, that there's a little bit of mystery to this, is like how this piece evolved. And now we have it here, and it's really refreshing. I'm not sure if Dorothy bent these or if they just kind of evolved that way in nature, because the one is called curved bark, and it's one piece of bark and it's got 3 slits through it. So I kind of just assumed that Dorothy found this, and then eventually as it dried in her studio, it might have curled up, and then she added one more layer of curl, and it just evolved into something that's just so simple and beautiful. And it really, I like that in nature, that something so simple can be turned into something very sculptural. And to me, that's a really sign of just good seeing, just being able to see something and see it evolved. And then the boat, everyone likes the shape of a boat, and this just is very celebratory of boats. And the way the vine bark is holding all this together is just beautiful. It's like a basket boat, and the unfinished, ends not being all kind of pointing up. It kind of I don't know, it's kind of like a boat of hope. It just continually evolving. I like how this work, Dorothy obviously started out as a basket maker, and then the work just evolved to make all these wonderful sculptures. And what I like about this is how they evolved, and the base of the log, and then it turns into this like totem. And it's just, it kind of celebrates some of the history of basket making, and at the same time celebrates all the wonderful forms you see in nature, and everything from the knots in the trunk where branches were, the way those are highlighted by her finishing the wood down and just leaving the bark at the base, providing a base, and then the same color of the bark repeating itself at the top. It's just wonderful. And then the smaller baskets are just, the lace work is just wonderful. I mean, there's so much about it that reminds you also of the indigenous culture that was here in Ohio before we arrived, and the fact that it just draws you back into that history and all that beautiful nature and the bark, and it's just ceaselessly interesting. This is a collection of Dorothy's sticks, I call them, and they're just, some of them are just been, insects have made their mark, and other ones are just insects and things like that. But the top one is the beaver stick, and obviously you can see the spot where the beaver has chewed the bottom of the branch or log or tree. And then it just dawned on me that all the sticks that are now in the beaver chewed off log are the beaver sticks that have been gnawed, the bark has been gnawed off, and they have left all their marks. And when you're out walking in the long time stream banks, you'll find lots of bare beaver sticks. And this is, to me, just kind of celebrates Dorothy's work, because these are those ordinary things. You see them all the time along stream banks. And I have picked up beaver sticks and, just looked at them and thought, oh, how interesting. But Dorothy has taken the two and has kind of almost like made a quiver of these beaver sticks into the log, and it really does celebrate the ordinary. It's just a wonderful piece, and I just it just engages me endlessly. And then with the rest of them as well, there's a word here called dendroglyph, and that's a great thing about art, is I have not been familiar with that word, and this is where indigenous people would have left marks in trees, and then years later the marks would be trail markers or things like that. But in Dorothy's case, she would come back later after the tree's life is gone and collect the tree and collect the bark or collect the stick. And it just educated me. And, I never thought about that part of the indigenous culture. And then the fact that Dorothy continues that and turns it into art is really I think it really reflects wonderfully on the Midwest. It's part of our nature and part of our history. And then it's brought here to the present, and it helps educate. And that's really cool.